Welcome back, everybody, to the sessions. We're going to start again, and it's my pleasure to introduce Hedley Auld as the chair for the luncheon session. And Hedley, I'll let you introduce our speakers.
Well, I'm pleased too to be able to introduce you to our two joint presenters in our next session, Dr. Gaston Cedillo Campos and Dr. Eric Moreno Quintero, both of whom are researchers at the Instituto Mexicano del Transporte, the Mexican Institute of Transport, which is often abbreviated as the IMT. Now, Dr. Gaston Cedillo is a researcher of the IMT and serves as technical director of the National Laboratory for Transportation and Logistics, which is a center of excellence supported by the Mexican Institute of Transport and the Mexican National Council of Science and Technology. The lab is headquartered at the IMT Research Campus in Querétaro, which is, I think, where you're with us from. You are there today, I think, Gaston?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Dr. Cedillo's undergraduate studies were in urban engineering, and these were followed by master's level graduate studies in transportation at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, and in logistics at the University of the Mediterranean in Aix-en-Provence in France. He continued his doctoral studies in transportation in France at the Université de Paris-Est, where he earned a PhD. And Dr. Cedillo is a visiting professor in transportation and logistics at 3 universities in Mexico, and he's taught at other universities in Europe and in Latin America. He's authored many scientific publications in leading international journals, and he has experience in research and consulting and development of entrepreneurial and technological solutions in transportation and logistics. And Dr. Cedillo is also the founding president of the Mexican Logistics and Supply Chain Association. And Dr. Eric Moreno is a senior researcher of the IMT. His research interests are mathematical modeling of transportation systems and freight transportation, and applications of operations research and statistics to transportation. Dr. Moreno's undergraduate studies included a major in mathematics. Then he obtained a master's in operations research from the National Autonomous University of Mexico in Mexico City. He studied in England at the Institute for Transport Studies of the University of Leeds, where he earned a PhD in transportation. Dr. Moreno is also a visiting professor of the Autonomous University of Querétaro. He's published the results of his scientific research in many leading international journals of transportation, logistics, and operations research. Now, Dr. Cedillo and Dr. Moreno will be delivering their presentation to us today from Querétaro, Mexico, which is located approximately 200 kilometers northwest of Mexico City, I reckon. Incidentally, the weather forecast today for Santiago to Querétaro today is a high of 27, which will be more than of passing interest to those of us in Winnipeg, as the forecast here for next Monday is a high of minus 21, I beg your pardon. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Gaston Cedillo and Dr. Eric Moreno to speak at Fields on Wheels 2021 on the topic of Nearshoring Mexico, opportunities and challenges. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Hedley. Let me share my, that's right. Okay. So I think now it's okay, right? So, hello everyone. We are very pleased to be here and being part of this edition of Fields on Wheels. Thank you, Professor Barry Prentice, for your kind invitation. Also, thank you, Hedley, for sharing this session. Over the next 20 minutes, my colleague Eric Moreno and I will deliver data and information about the agro supply chains in Mexico. Our intention is to provide answers to the following big question. What kind of challenges and opportunities exist in Mexico for collaborating with Canada? The agenda for this presentation is divided in 4 main points. First, we want to tell you the Mexican Transportation Institute, better known as IMT. Second, some driving forces, the search for resilience and fluidity, which are making regional, some globalized supply chains will be exposed. Third, some interesting data related to the import and export operations between Canada and Mexico will be presented. And finally, some interesting opportunities for promoting a more successful relationship between our countries will be discussed. So, Eric, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing this space with us. We are very happy to be here. Mexican Transportation Institute is located in the city of Querétaro, 137 miles northwest from Mexico City. Established in 1987 by a presidential agreement with the Secretariat of Communications and Transport. Its main objective is to do applied research and technological development in the field of transport, both for the private sector and the public sector. And the idea is all together. That means the solution, in this case, the interest is for everyone. Somos todos, we are together. Government, business, and the academy. The working groups in the IMT, at the IMT, manages several topics. Road safety, this was a very important topic. Logistics and integrated transport, vehicular engineering, marine hydraulics, and the transport economy of transport. Of course, in the facilities of the city of Querétaro, we have several labs working in several very interesting topics like safety, innovation in logistics and transport, structural integrity lab, and the Center of Bridge Monitoring, the case of the infrastructure lab with the heavy vehicle simulator, and finally, the area of marine hydraulics, having a ship maneuver simulator. All these services are available for anyone interested in these topics, and with very, very professional people working in this. You are welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we call this next section as the North American Insight. And this is because we wanted to take as a starting point the recent changes in supply chain and supply and demand that are reorganizing the global trade flows in some regional freight movements. As Adrian, Leanne, and Peter Sain argue in their book entitled Designing Nature, the vital property of all systems is to favor the connectivity of its components with other systems, maximizing the flow between them. And maybe this is the reason why, since 1958, when the Treaty of Rome came into force, it was the first so-called regional trade agreement, the number of these agreements in force has grown exponentially over the past 60 years. Until now, there is around a very strong and dynamic network of global trade agreements in which our global trade is organized. Thanks to this, during the last decades, many global value chains were made and many regions were integrated to positive benefits and negative consequences of globalization. However, leaving aside this discussion, great sources of disruptions appear. For example, the tech and trade war between China and the US, the COVID-19 and its economic disruptions, which reveal serious vulnerabilities in the global supply chains, and the natural and human caused disruptions as the incident with the container ship One Opus, which lost around 2,000 containers, and the Suez Canal blockage in March 2021. And thus has prices moving transcontinental flows emerge. So, however, this situation is not surprising. It was foreseen by Toyota since 2011, when it announced its intention to make each global region independent in parts procurement, so the effects of a disaster in one region don't ripple worldwide. Equally, Foxconn chairman Liu Yong stated in 2019 that as a result of Sino-US tensions, the world was split into two groups of supply chains. As a result of the IMT, our premise is that the productive systems are not disconnected to the territories, and the supply chain fluidity are the link stimulating regional competitiveness. In fact, we think that currently there is an interesting relationship between industrial clusters and global value chains to be explored as a research topic, but also as a tool for designing more resilient supply chains in North America. This is why in 2014, we proposed the term supply chain clustering, an approach where the clusters of local producers would be the pillars founded on the territory which support the regional value chains as a bridge between markets. But in any case, North America is a region where the countries have the most trade agreements. Therefore, we argue that if a resilient logistics value you want to create, a North American ecosystem you should generate. Now, my colleague Eric Moreno will present you some interesting data and challenges for collaborating in agro supply chains.
Thank you very much. I will share my screen to show you briefly. Okay. Can you see that? Right.
Okay.
Some challenges, I will do this very quickly in order to save time, but I hope this will be clear. First, we make a very short resume about the Canada-Mexico trade. The top 10 products from Canada to Mexico in 2020, measuring the trade value. It's a very important automotive parts, and then turnip seeds, and then chemical catalysts and wheat, and so on. This has a very basic idea of what is coming from Canada. Then, excuse me. In the case of the grains, let me check this. Sorry. It seems a little troubling with this, but okay. In the other side, the top 10 products from Mexico to Canada is the other side. There are some cases for the automobile, automobile parts, motor vehicle for freight, and so on. Well, this gives us a very basic idea of what is moving from northbound and from southbound. Okay, what about the total grains? The total grains import is very important. We have here some very, very short figures. Oh, sorry. Based on data from the Mexican custom, we have this information. 1.2% of the total imported grains comes from Canada. That means that there's a great potential to improve. 98% plus comes from USA. But it's important to know that we have much more space for improving this grain coming from Canada. In the case of the import, the rail freight import, we have some information here about years from 2015 to 2020, there is some movements in million tons. The main products coming in import by rail is mainly corn, containers, and soybeans. The rail freight import of grains is very interesting to know that there is almost 72% of the total of 27.7 billion tons comes from Canada and USA. And these are the ports, the points of entry, the entry points. And we can see here in the northern border that is very important points of measuring the size of the imports. In the coast, Veracruz is the most important, followed for Manzanillo in the Pacific side. 72% of imports of grains enter by the USA-Mexican border. Is obviously the surface transport is very important here. And the rest is coming by the Gulf of Mexico, 21.6%, and almost 6% by the Pacific coast. Okay. In the case of the rail import of grains, let me put this, okay. 52% of the grains moved by rail in 2019 came from these regions, some in the area of Canada and some in the USA. Most of them are coming from Texas, Nebraska, Illinois, Iowa. Then the next level is from Kansas. But obviously, there is something coming from Saskatchewan in Canada and the other states of the unit, the USA. Manitoba apports 1.2%. That is, well, not too much, but it's possible to improve maybe. This gives an idea of where the grain is coming to Mexico, and then the destination of this grain. The main states receiving grain are Sonora, Durango, Jalisco, Guanajuato, Michoacán. Well, this is Hidalgo, Veracruz, etc. Main percent of the cargo received is in this part. 81% of the grain received is in the darker areas. Well, this gives us the idea where the destination is located the grain. What about the import-export? Well, the rail freight import-export, in the case in the US-Mexico border, we have imports and export in these tables. And we can see in 2020, imports were 46.1 million tons, mainly crossing at Nuevo Laredo and Piedras Negras. These entry points are very important. Regarding export, it's the same idea. 15.4 million tons were moved, mainly crossing in Nuevo Laredo and then Piedras Negras. This again is telling us the importance of the surface movements, in this case, mainly in these entry points. Finally, the maritime freight import, we can see here wheat coming from Canada, from Vancouver, and the other side, wheat and canola and wheat and other seeds like turnip seed, oats, and etc. This is the moving of grain in the maritime mode, coming to Manzanillo, Lázaro Cárdenas in the Pacific side, and Veracruz and Tuxpan in the Gulf of Mexico. Well, maritime trade import-export, again, we have here the imports and the exports from Mexico. In 2020, imports through Mexican port moved this kind, almost 17 million tons, mainly in Veracruz and Manzanillo. On the export sides, only about 6 million tons were moved, mainly living from Guaymas in the Pacific side, and Veracruz. Challenges then, from our general point of view, we are thinking that the four main challenges are detected for improving agrologistics operation in Mexico. First one, integration of a reliable regional information system. Well, then reducing the crossing times at the US-Mexico border. This is a very basic need. And there are some works on this for several years, but this is still a problem in this case. Increasing investment in transportation infrastructure. And then a coordination and cooperation between supply chains entities in the North American level. Finally, increasing the human resource competence with the, we expect an integrated vision to deliver custom-made regional solutions. Okay, concerning physical infrastructure, there are a couple of challenges. We have a high dependence on road transport. This is a very old problem. Near 88% of food is shipped by the road system. Well, except some grains transported by railway. And the radial pattern of the higher network in the center of the country, we have a radial network moving vehicles in the road, reduces the connections east-west and north-south. A few ports are prepared for agrologistics. Connectivity between the port infrastructure and rail system needs to be improved. And finally, the air transport is very poor use in the agrologistics. These questions are we consider some challenge to solve, to face, to give more flexibility, more efficiency to these movements. In the relation to the storage and cold chain, there are a couple of points. 50% of perishable food are transported without any refrigeration. Finally, the lack of cold storage capacity and cold inspection installations, it's a problem for the transportation infrastructure potential in order to ship fresh products. Well, the opportunities, sorry for this very, very quick movement, but we have not much time. So I give the word to my colleague, Dr. Cedillo, to talk about opportunities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. About opportunities, Mexico counts with interesting advantages for increasing agro supply chains with Canada. For example, a well-connected to the North national road system, 8 maritime ports prepare for international trade, and well-connected to the North national rail system. Mexico has a significant international potential in fast-growing products, such as fresh, high-quality fruits and vegetables. At a global level, export markets that are growing faster are strawberries, asparagus, and nuts, mainly. Other products of lower volume, but with fast growth are broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, and kale. An opportunity area is where price differentials are positive, such as broccoli, cauliflower, peppers, lemons, dry lime, and fresh berries. In that case, key agrologistics infrastructure has been identified as agrologistics corridors, as you can see. And now there is an increasing investments in transportation infrastructure. For example, the recent creation of the first single line rail network linking the US, Mexico, and Canada, that would be a great source of advantages for our regional trade flows, mainly for automotive parts and grains, as my colleague Eric mentioned. So another source of opportunity is to reduce the variability of crossing times at the US-Mexican border. In 2014, we performed research in collaboration with researchers located in the US and in Canada, and we identified as an important trade barrier the so-called cross-border effect. So in this case, there are many important issues to reduce uncertainty in crossing times, but at the same time, maybe there is an opportunity for innovative solutions as proposed Professor Barry Prentice, could be the use of cargo ships, who knows? Finally, we are currently working hard, the IMT and TAMIU, Texas A&M located in Laredo, in creating a mechanism for coordinating supply chains at a North American level by integrating a regional network of logistics clusters. The first step counts with the logistics clusters of Mexican states of San Luis Potosí, Querétaro, which are located in the center of Mexico, and other states like Coahuila, Nuevo León, and Tamaulipas, which are located in the, at the border with the US, and the American state of Texas. If you want to know more about this and other opportunities, please click on these links. There are interesting data which are provided by some official sources as the INEGI or Data Mexico, the IMT, and others which are located in different spaces on the internet. So thank you very much for your attention. Merci. Gracias.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. We're just going to open the floor now to questions from the audience. And if you would like to pose a question to our panel, I wonder if you could just use the chat facility and forward it through. I'll watch for questions from the floor. I mentioned to Gaston that I'm formerly with CN, and as I read the presentation about some of the barriers that exist on agro trade between Canada and Mexico, it brings back some memories of trying to develop this market. It's a difficult one. Railways have targets for things like asset utilization. Earlier this session, we heard about the container steamship lines taking a very aggressive stance on asset utilization and looking at container turnaround. And I know this was one of the frustrations that we had in our development of direct rail market into the US, into Mexico, that long car cycles meant that the equipment was away and couldn't be reloaded for another revenue load in Canada. And so it meant that we had to take price action, which maybe meant that we were uncompetitive in having traffic flow down from Western Canada down to Mexico in comparison with the relative price of traffic moving through Thunder Bay to get on a vessel, or going through Vancouver and getting on a vessel and then going in through the Pacific Coast ports or through the Gulf ports, as your statistics pointed out. It's another option for moving bulk grain. But in other areas, we tried to develop intermodal options, thinking that the equipment was, there was less value tied up in the equipment. And so, and this is where it became apparent that the cross-border delays were a major problem. And I just would like to go back just on your question of the 2014 article that you were citing there. What were you finding were some of the main sources of delay in handling truck traffic going across, which would include intermodal traffic, containerized traffic?
Thank you, Hadley. Yeah, one of the most important findings of this research was the uncertainty of the processes crossing the US and Mexican border. In fact, the crossing times are not the standard. So the problem with that is that the companies needs some standardization on these crossing times, just in order to plan the safety stock, for instance, or other important issues when planning logistics. So this problem is one of the most important, and most of the companies try against this problem, just increasing safety stock. But in fact, this increase the total logistics cost for all partners in the supply chain. So if you think the global cost of North American supply chain, this kind of issues became very important for the North American competitiveness. So in this case, we are proposing to standardize this kind of processes or design a kind of policies to standardize the processes when crossing the border. So in our opinion, this is the most important key issue.
I should just add as a comment that when it deals with agricultural products, I think there's an additional layer of inspections that go beyond what you might find with auto parts or other things. Would you care to comment on that? Our finding was that we were trying to see if we could get enough scale to pre-clear agricultural inspections here up in Canada, and so allow us to bypass the border inspections entirely. But there were some very, very difficult practices of inspection that it was just impossible to overcome. And so they're institutional barriers, I think.
Yeah, that's right, Hedley. In fact, this is for agricultural products. There are another layer, which is the layer of security. So because of this concern for agricultural products are more difficult to cross fastly the US-Mexican border. So that's right. Maybe we think about other solutions that cargo airships, maybe, I don't know. But in fact, because I think it's very complicated to standardize crossing policies, but we need to try. It's important region, right?
Eric, you had a very surprising statistic in there about the cold chain and perishable goods, and saying that a high percentage of perishable agricultural products are not currently refrigerated. And this is what something is revealed out of your data. And can you just elaborate on that a little bit? That's a surprising statistic, because there really seems to be an opportunity there.
Yes. The problem is the investment needed for making the vehicles available with an equipment. But it depends on the companies. So as far as I know, there is a very little refrigerated rail car. So I don't know, but in the case of the rail, it's more difficult. But for the trucks, it's a very common use. Not many people investing in that.
Yes, we see it more on what we call reefers on the container side, which is containerized refrigerated cargo.
Well, yes, in that case, it's okay.
Yeah. I'm speculating, and again, I'm just going to make a judgment call here, that turnip seed may be appearing in your statistics as some standard international code. I'd speculate that that is actually what we call canary seed. It's bird seed. And I understand that the Mexican city market is one of the great consumers of bird seed. And Saskatchewan is one of the world leaders in the exports of canary seed. I know David Nesnick might be on the call here, or on our in our audience today, and perhaps he could even comment on that. But I would speculate that it may be that may be the major flow that we're seeing going through. Barry, did you have a question that you?
I do actually. With regard to the cold chain, my understanding is there was supposed to be a refrigerated inspection site being set up. I think Piedras Negras was the location, although I don't know if that ever happened. What are the links in the cold chain that seem to be the weakest? Is it at the storage distribution, the rail cars, the inspection sites, or where does the system not proceed as it should?
Well, this is a very difficult question to me, but to have an idea of the weakest link in this cold chain, well, I'm not very sure.
Yeah, well,
I think, I'm sorry, I think in the part of storage, no? In fact, in Mexico now is missing an infrastructure related to cold storage. So in my opinion, this is the main opportunity, if I can say, opportunity part to improve cold supply chain. Yeah.
Certainly, as Diane was saying earlier, there seems to be an opportunity. We send frozen French fries, frozen meats to Mexico, and we bring in frozen vegetables and fruit juices and so on. There should be a natural two-way trade, but it never seems to have been able to get that coordinated with the shippers to work together to do this. But it would be a logical way of expanding trade on both sides. Perhaps this is the opportunity for Centerport also to play a role as a distribution and collection center at either end. Something that we would like to see happen.
Yeah, that's right. And did you know, Barry, another issue or another opportunity area for us is the the education of professionals in logistics, because as you know, agro supply chains and the cold chain is very specialized, and now in Mexico there is not so much programs related to education in these matters. So yeah, there is another opportunity to collaborate with different knowledge institutions in Canada, maybe.
The one thing we could say that's positive coming out of the pandemic is everybody knows the term supply chain now. So maybe we'll have more interest also for students and departments. We are, again, in Canada, having new departments formed in this, but it's still relatively new in terms of our academic systems as well. Although I can tell you, for anyone listening, everyone coming through our logistics supply chain program is getting jobs in the area. So there's certainly a high demand for individuals with expertise in logistics supply chain.
Yeah, and in Mexico, we have a kind of network. For instance, the Instituto Tecnológico de Sonora, Sonora Tech Institute, which is located in the Pacific side, has important programs in that topic. And the other one is the University of Nuevo León. So in fact, there are some points to collaborate in this matter.
I'd like to, is Sean Wildman, I wonder if he could maybe open up his mic and provide the comment that he's texted through to me, please.
Hi there, it's Sean here. Yeah. No, I just to repeat what I put on the group chat is I'm pretty sure it's not turnip seeds, it's canola. And likely the confusion is they both have the same genus, right? They're similar plants, similar heritage. So, yeah, that's my point of clarification.
It makes complete sense when you start saying that, and there may be Spanish, English, and maybe even Latin involved in the translation. So,
Yeah.
I just
yes. We should order 1 kilogram of turnip seeds to check.
There you go.
Barry, are there any other questions?
I have one question. I was in Mexico some years ago at the Puerto Altamira at Tampico. And when I was there, the folks were telling me that they used to move a lot of grain through Tampico, and then all of a sudden the railways took it over, and their facilities have been fairly empty. How do the railways compete versus the ocean transport? I mean, is it an unfair competition? Texas is right there and just straight north. So how do the marine systems compete?
Eric, please.
Well, I think there is a link in the flow in the cargo flowing from the rail to the maritime mode is, I think that this is not precisely a competence, but concurrence. But they are sort of partners because they are moving the same thing. We have no much information, well, at least I have no much information about the interchange, but I am sure that this is a very seamless movement. And the rail is needed because the moving, when the freight is arriving to the port, in order to get inland, the rail is very important, the railroad. Trucks are, sometimes we have some scarcity of trucks and for moving the cargo. And there is an opportunity for the rail.
Certainly one thing we know about Mexico is you have a lot of mountains, and that's not necessarily good for rail. And your distances for haul are relatively short. The rail lines are basically looking like export lines going north, as opposed to domestic distribution, which seems to be almost all by truck. In fact, if I recall correctly, the railways have actually gained quite a bit of traffic since the discontinuation of Ferrocarriles Nacionales and creating a concessions. So, there's been a lot of investment and development in the railways in Mexico in that time. Could you comment on that?
Well, we observed a very, very high increasing in the moving of freight after the privatization, and with several investment, very important investment, mainly with the Kansas City and the other side in the Ferrocarril Mexicano, but I think that is linked to Union Pacific. But of course, you can see the statistics, and this is increasingly very rapidly, and they have, I think they are very happy with this performance, and this is very good. And probably now they are making some movements about some companies that are together. In the case of Ferromex and Ferrosur. And there is a problem in the payment of the rights to pass one of the networks or one of the other one. We have some problem there, but in general, the rail, the Mexican railway system is has worked very well. Even with the pandemic, we see that it's not too much the impact, because the freight is moving, is needed for many things. So I think that this is a very good performance, even in these pandemic times.
We're just about up for time, Barry. We said about 1:15. Did you want to terminate discussion here? I see one more question from you can see in the general the chat. If we've got a little bit more time, and then we could maybe stretch out to 1:30, if that be fine.
Sure, I think we've got time for this.
Okay. Carlos Martiner of IMT has commented that the weakest link in refrigerated products is inspection by sanitary and customs authorities at the ports and and borders. So it's a frontier issue. Currently, the cold chains work quite well for export and import flows at the land borders and ports. Chris Ferris, you're asking the question, what would be the biggest opportunity for the cold chain in Mexico? And I'm assuming that you're talking about Mexico-Canada trade flows. What do you see as being the largest, lowest hanging fruit or the largest opportunity based on what you've seen? Gentlemen.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think is the investments in refrigerated facilities is the most important challenge for us, and I think is the most useful investment that we can do. In fact, there are some states in Mexico, as San Luis Potosí and others, which are missing this kind of facilities. So if we want to export to Canada or to the US, we need a very strong network of this kind of facility. So I think this is the most important aspect to invest.
Eric, did you want to add anything?
Well, this topic of refrigerated cargo is not very known to me, but probably, as Gaston said, there's some chances to improve. I would like to know if Marner has some opinion on this in view of the response to the weakest link in refrigerated products.
But in any case, at this time, there are interesting investments in rail at the Istmo de Tehuantepec. In that case, I think maybe some investments related to cold chains are at this time in progress. So this kind of investments could be interesting to reinforce the network of cold chain in Mexico.
Well,
We should also recognize that there are some trade barriers too. Mexico has wonderful oranges and tangerines, and we never get them in Canada because they're not allowed to cross the United States. And I think there's some other phytosanitary barriers like that as well. So, so there are some limitations that are outside of our control, and therefore, you know, it does curtail. I've always wondered why those things weren't shipped by sea. They certainly have the shelf life that could come by water to Canada, but it may also come back to that weak linkages we have in some cases in the maritime between Canada and Mexico as well. So certainly there's opportunities for future growth without question.
That's right. And you know, another opportunity is to invest in agro platforms, intermodal platforms with different facilities related to cold chain. So in fact, there are different opportunities, but the issue is the size of the investment. So maybe this is a great opportunity to collaborate, to identify these kind of facilities in Mexico.
Well, my effort in the airships has been noted already, and certainly one day we're looking forward to the time when we can fly the tomatoes and right from Mexico all the way to Winnipeg, and they won't just look like tomatoes; they'll even taste like tomatoes. We'll get them here fast and fresh, and that's sort of the hope for the future. So again, I think, you know, our destiny is to work closer together and to do more. And it's been very nice to have a chance to have you speak today with us.
Well, thank you again, gentlemen, for participating in our luncheon session here.